Welcome in to the SorareData Strategy Show. I am Andrew Laird. You can find me as Lairdinho on Sorare, joined on this lovely Friday by Sean Newsham, PSU fans too on Sorare. Before we just started, we were talking about how sad we were. And I think I'm going to really try to not let that sadness carry over to our entire show today, Sean. But we were talking about Juni Ito's move to, I don't even know where he's going. That's how bad it is. I don't even care. He's going somewhere in France. He's not playing for Genk. I will never use him again. And I was particularly excited because I recently bought his card a few weeks ago. And I got all excited because it was like a 2018-19 card. It was one of the originals. And I was like, he's a guy that like, it feels like everyone who's been on the platform for a long time has one. And I didn't have one, and I wanted to buy like an elite forward for All-Star Rare Pro, and I got him, and I was so happy. And now I'm just never going to use the card again, and I can sell it for like, maybe I can sell it for half of what I paid. And I feel like I should be not angry, because I really don't feel like this is something to get like angry about, even though some people do. And I'm just sad, Sean. I'm sad.
I mean, I think that it's your fault, really. I mean, because you were bragging about how he's got you a decisive in the first game. So like that was just like the death blow where he's like, "Well, I got to go," and he angled his way out. What did you pay? Like 1.1?
No, it was like 1.4.
Oh, you cannot get half of what you paid.
No, I can't. And the only thing that, so one of the other things that I was excited about with this card is that I got it from somebody who like hasn't been on Sorare for 2 years since they got the card. So it had previously been used. That's actually a topic I'll talk about another time. Maybe later, we'll see. But I was just like, when you go to like the like cards that this card has won page, it was like basically empty. There was one other reward was one with it. I have won a card every single time I played this Juni Ito card.
It's true.
100%.
You're
And
perfect.
now it might stay that way because I don't think I'm ever using it again.
Well, the thing is so like, all right, so he's like half ETH. Let's call him half ETH. I don't even think you can sell it because he's gonna. I don't know. Like, I guess you can sell it, but like he's gonna go somewhere eventually and be good again. Like he's just not. Like he's 29 already. Like he's gonna go back to Japan at some point. You'd think, or he's gonna like. He's got like I think he went to Reims.
Yeah.
So I think they are like a relegation candidate. Last year, oh no, they were not that bad. They were like mid-table.
That bad. That's
like
the worst part.
They were mid-table and couldn't score goals.
Yeah.
So like I mean maybe I don't obviously like so I saw some people were like, well maybe he'll be okay and whatnot. He's not going to be okay.
That's my favorite. He'll still be good in a champion Europe league.
No. Like he needs to average like 68, 70 points a game at Reims to be good. And like that's not the case. Like so, I mean, he averaged 63 on the new Matrix. He's at 63 for an L40 at Genk. And if he does that in Champ Europe, like that's okay. I mean, that's fine. Like you would be able to recoup an amount for that, I would say, but like that just doesn't cut it in terms of like actually winning rewards, and that's just not what you want to do. Like effectively, so like him moving there is like, let's call him best case scenario. This is best case scenario. He's like Munain, who's like an ETH, an average 64 game over L40.
He's extremely underpriced for what his production is.
Yeah, like I don't think that's realistic. I mean, like you look to me. So he's a little bit older. So like a good example would be like, I don't know. I just don't see how like De La Feu. De La Feu is probably a pretty good realistic comparison. And De La Feu's price is 0.619. He averages like 59 a game L40. It just doesn't. It's just not great. Like people aren't out there winning rewards with like De La Feu every week. Like, so it's just not a card you're out there like, yeah, I'm pumped to use this card. You're like, okay.
I'm glad you brought De La Feu up because I considered buying De La Feu back when I was like, oh, let me put my champion Europe team together when I bought Gianluca Caprari. And I feel like Ito's scores he would be lucky to get to Caprari.
Yeah.
And I won nothing with Caprari in champion Europe. Like
You
it's just not
got,
enough.
in my opinion, a top 10% outcome with all your champ Europe guys. You really did.
Absolutely.
And you didn't win a reward.
Nothing.
Like that just shows like how you need to be. I think in order to get like legit rewards, well, I'm not talking like a tier 3. Like, yeah, you probably got some tier 3s. Actually, I don't think you won like anything, but
I definitely did win some tier 3s.
But tier 3s for you with the cost of a champ Europe team, and just don't cut it. So you're talking you need to win tier 1s, tier 0s, and if you win 0 of them on average on a season, that's just not going to cut it. But like I think to get a tier 1 or tier 0, you need to average like what, 75 points? 80?
It's a lot.
No, it's a lot. So I don't know. I think you hit a huge top end outcome on like all of your guys, and you just got nothing. But like it is a good league. Like I'd much rather him go there than Spain or the Premier League. Like there's generally more goals scored to some of the bottom teams. Like some of the really bad teams in France, like Bordeaux gave up 3 goals a game last year.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not all that, but there's a couple really bad teams in France. So like I don't know, but like 0.5, like what are you gonna do? You're gonna sell him. He'll probably at least be like serviceable to use as like a spot player here and there. And then eventually you just hope he gets a move to somewhere that's gonna be more productive for him.
Yeah, the waiting for Japan is like
I was much happier waiting for Japan with him at Genk.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I appreciate the people who were like trying to be positive about it. They were like, he's like still good. He'll definitely play. You now have like a champion Europe forward, and it's like these aren't.
I don't appreciate those people. I like to live in reality, not a weird warp. It's actually been a really weird week for a lot of reasons. Like I've had players that have become very valuable and very much better than what they were based on the new scoring matrix. Some key guys that like could be pretty usable for me that went from like, okay, this guy's okay to like, this guy's probably a pretty high-end option for me. Then I've had the Ito saga, we're just dead. Then I've had, then we've gone through the Jay Gorter saga where it was Jay Gorter on the rise to Jay Gorter dead to Jay Gorter back in power. And like now we're just sitting there watching the ascension of Jay Gorter. Although I think this one will be a little bit more calm, I would say. I don't think people are just going to spike Gorter because of where we're at. Never mind. I retract that. I guess he's been selling around 0.3 again.
Yeah, he's right.
To be fair, it makes sense. I told you before it happened, if he is the starter at Ajax, he's at least a 0.5 card in a limited. His rare is probably one of the best rare goalies. I would say it's at least like a 3 to 4 ETH card as a rare. No one's bought him actually, but everyone removed their Gorter floor. The Gorter floor is now 3. Like all the people that had him listed around 2 have withdrawn what they had listed him at.
Yeah, as they should. Before we jump into Gorter, because I do want to talk about him, just a quick hello and thank you to everybody who has joined us in the chat. Looks like Brones was first in. Shrirum's here. King Kaizan, Tommy B, Pascal, Mito, Mike Bastin, Little Lettuce. We got a whole bunch here. Wow, that's a lot of people. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, especially those who are attempting to make me feel better about this Juni Ito debacle. But we just have to accept that one and move on. So the topic of today was about the new scoring matrix. We are not really going to go into like here are the top 10 players who benefit the most or who have the biggest drop. If you have not subscribed to the SorareData newsletter, I suggest doing that because we went into something in the issue that went out. It was last night for us, early morning in Europe. But we basically went into the fact that you can't just look at raw point total differences. Like, oh, this guy went from 52 to 55, so he must be better, and so we'll go get him. Because what you really need to do is compare that to everybody else. And so it's like, I believe the example we had was with Marquinhos, who was believed to be, or was previously one of the best, specifically champion Europe defenders, but his average didn't change all that much but he dropped something like almost 20 spots in the rankings, so that there were other guys behind him who got better. And so just because he didn't change that much doesn't mean like it didn't change. There are actually other guys who are now better or have been better than him. So I wanted to point that out because it just felt like a lot of people were looking at like, oh, how many points did this guy go up? And how many points did this guy go up? And it's like, you can't just look at that in a vacuum, because that doesn't, you need the context of who they are more or less of now. The other is that a lot of situations, like we've seen a lot of transfers, Juni Ito being one of them. And so people are like, oh, this guy barely moved. I forget the tweets that went out. Somebody was talking about Vindal, and they were like, his score doesn't change that much. And it's like, his score is going to change massively this season, but not because of the new scoring matrix. It's because he plays for Ajax now. And so I think a lot of people are looking at players who are on new teams thinking that they're going to get what they got with the old team, in good and bad. Like if you're looking at Juni Ito's scores previously and like, oh, he benefits a little bit from the scoring matrix. And it's like, what you saw previously is not what you're going to see in the future. So two things just to be aware of. One of the ones that we were talking about, you and I, off stream, was Jay Gorter. So Sean and I decided to play the Gorter lottery last week because we were like, if he starts, he's way underpriced. And I said this to Sean. Sean basically swept most of the floor and then made me buy one as well, which I did.
All right, so here's a question, Laird. Who convinced the other to do it? Because
so I believe the actual conversation was me telling you, I think Jay Gorter is underpriced. And I think the response that you had was to sweep the floor. And then you were like, why would you tell me this before you bought one? And I was like, you're right. So I bought one.
Well, more so you're like, well, I'm spending money on baseball.
That's right. I did say that. I said, no, I need money for baseball.
Oh, this makes sense. I'm going to not do that. And I'm going to buy a bunch of Jay Gorters. And then and then I made you feel bad to buy a Jay Gorter.
You completely, it's not guilt.
I shamed you into it.
I wasn't, yeah, right. You didn't guilt me into it, but you also didn't call me a moron for not doing it. But there was something in between that I was like, he's right. I should go buy one.
I've been pretty cautious with calling moronness out when in regards to the baseball product, because I have no idea where that's going. So I've been
the good news is that nobody knows.
Yeah, exactly. So like I have not called anyone a moron or said the only thing I did say about baseball, I guess, is that I don't understand the paying a shitload for a bunch of limiteds early. That's the only thing I've said in regards to baseball. Otherwise, like I have no idea if it's going to be smart or dumb to have bought baseball at the earlier stages.
Yeah, we don't know.
No clue.
So the dots like that are right before where I bought, as you can see on this chart, are basically all Sean. How many did you get? 5?
4.
4? Okay.
Yeah.
So the conversation we were having was very simple, and it's something that I think a lot of people kind of confuse with what they do with what happened with Bart Verbruggen. And that in that situation, it was like, oh, he's rumored to Burnley, and everybody went out and bought one. And then that fell through, and then everybody sold. Gorter, we knew we were fairly confident was going to stay at Ajax. And we were saying, like, if he stays at Ajax, or if he's the starter at Ajax, he's worth 5x. Like, is he 20 yet? Or 22, excuse me.
Yeah.
He's got 22. He's got 2 more years of U23 eligibility. If he wins this job, he is arguably the best U23 goalkeeper. Now, I think you could make the argument. I think there are arguments against that he's the best, but it's really difficult for me to think that he is outside the top. I was going to say 5, but I'll say 4. Like, I think it's
all right. So like,
I think the only ones in the conversation are older is the problem. Like Donnarumma, I think, is in the conversation, but part of him being in a conversation is that he's still extremely valuable once he's no longer U23.
Correct.
And a lot of guys don't necessarily have that.
I basically look at Gorter, if he gets the job, as a slightly worse version of Diogo Costa, because Diogo Costa doesn't have any question marks around him, but Gorter's on a better team. So to me, it kind of is like they're close in comparison, and it's just a matter of both. So basically, Costa has no knocks. Gorter has the knock of like maybe his leash is pretty short in the event he gets a start job.
Right. So our thought was based on where the limited prices were. If he's the starter, he's immediately more expensive. And we have talked about this. I can't remember if we've actually talked about this on stream or on a podcast, but I'll bring it up now. That the downside risks of U23 goalies is low, meaning there's not a ton of downside. U23 goalies rarely like drastically fall in price if they're not starters yet. Like people will buy them, and if they start, then they skyrocket. And if they don't start, they just kind of stay where they are. And maybe they go down 5-10%, but like very rarely do those guys go to zero.
Yeah.
And so there's like almost this inherent safety in U23 goalies. Almost more so the ones that haven't started yet. Because
there is more safety, I think, the ones that haven't started or haven't really been established. So when we bought Gorter was 0.15 ETH. That's pretty much when all of our buys were, like right in that range. So to answer some of the questions going on, so Martin said Gorter's playing in the Dutch Super Cup this weekend. Yes, and it appears that maybe Gorter is going to get a shot to be the starter. So we will see whether or that happens, if he starts or not after that. Metal Gear asked why everyone thinks that Ajax will be the same without their coach and some of their top players. Doesn't matter. They're going to be really good. Even though they lost some people, they're still going to be very good and one of the best teams in the Netherlands, regardless. So, like, maybe they're not as good, but, like, even if they are PSV, like, pretend they're PSV from last year, it makes Gorter be a really good top-end goaltender. And U23 goaltenders, the knock on them is most of them are not on good sides.
Right.
So they don't do as well in terms of, like, getting clean sheets. And then Baptiste talked about, we don't know him. He hasn't played much. We don't know how he'll do. It doesn't matter for goalie. For a goalie, he's a goalie. He's going to be similar to what Pasveer would do or Stecklenburg would do to some extent. Their system's going to remain the same. They're going to play a same style regardless which one's in there. And it's so like it's not really a player question where you're like, is this guy going to play cam? Is he going to play DM? Is he going to play right wing? It's more so that he's just going to play a goalie. He's going to be very similar to what the other guys do. Yes, the team might not be as good, which could knock down scores from what they were last year. But in general, the team's going to be good. So anyway, so we bought him at 0.15-ish each. So when I talked to Laird, I said, after he gave me the breakdown, even if Gorter lost the role at that time, which at that time, when we bought him, it was still steamrolling a little bit more towards like Gorter's probably going to start game one of the season. He's probably going to get a chance to go.
So I just want to cut you off for a quick second, though, because when we were discussing this, Remco Pasveer like hadn't returned yet. Like he was coming back from injury. Martin Stecklenburg was coming back from injury. So we were like, if Gorter plays the first game, we can get out then because everyone will just assume he's the starter, even if it looks like Pasveer is coming back. So we were even willing to say, like, the market is going to overreact to him starting one game while Pasveer is hurt. And so, like, we were like, theoretically, he's like a 0.3 ETH player if he starts week one, and he's probably like 0.5, 0.6 if he started the entire season. And like, that was a decent enough like flip for us anyway. But when you can see this drop in price that happens around like the 20 or basically the 26th, 27th of July, Pasveer came back and played a preseason match. And I remember you DM me and you were like, Gorter season's over.
Yep.
And it was like, yeah, it was. Yeah. And yet the price was still slightly higher than we bought.
We expected, so when we bought in, we thought the floor on Gorter at 0.15 when we bought him was 0.1. We both talked and we said we thought the floor was 0.1 on Gorter going into, if he wasn't the starter, we figured it would be 0.1 in terms of like what to expect from Gorter after that. So it's basically, we bought him at 0.15. The risk was from going to 0.15 to 0.1, but the upside was going from 0.15 to 0.5. So the risk far was below the reward in terms of what we were getting on that scale. So like, that's why I was like, yeah, this seems like a no-brainer at this price. Now, when it got to 0.3 to 0.34, I even told Laird, I'm like, because he's like, I don't know, should I sell right now? I'm like, it definitely makes sense to sell at this point or not, because you're pretty much in a situation where you're like right in between on the risk reward scale, where like both sides made sense. I told Laird, I'm like, I think he's probably going to start week 1 of the season. That opinion changed later, but like we had this discussion before Passphere came and played the friendly. It looked like he was going to get the go ahead, and then it changed back. But I told Laird, I'm like, 0.3, I think, is a really realistic time to dump him, because I thought there was a pretty good shot that he could dump down to 0.15 again instead of 0.5. So I thought you were right in the risk reward middle ground.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the other thing that we didn't want to ignore is that the 2 goalkeepers ahead of him or around him are like 58 and 60 years old and constantly hurt. So there was a possibility that Gorter was going to start at some point anyway. Like he's starting now because the old guys in front of him are hurt. And so I actually didn't, like, as soon as we were like, I think the floor is 0.1, we were like, maybe it's actually where we bought, because at some point, like, everybody's going to see a 22-year-old backing up a 40-year-old. I actually don't even know how old Passphere is. Even I don't think he's 40.
Passphere is 30. I think Steckler's 40.
Right.
They're like the only people on the platform you can call old too, so it's nice.
Exactly, Sean. Thank you. So Gorter, who is young enough to be my son, has a floor that's basically like where we were, which is why we were willing to take this risk. So the news came out today that Gorter's going to start this weekend against PSV. I will bet that at least a quarter of the people who either bought Gorter since that news came out or considered buying him thought that that was a league match and he would be scored this weekend. Like, nobody realizing that this is not a Sorare like game, so that once the game happens, like, you have to know that he started this game. Otherwise, there's like nothing in the stats or anywhere on the site that is like Gorter started the last game, because like the season hasn't started yet. Regardless, if he plays well, maybe that helps. But like, there's been nothing that he's like the starter for the regular season. And I don't know if that necessarily he's keeping his floor, his ceiling, or his new floor. What are people selling for now?
0.3-ish is what he was good. He has sold a 0.3, but it's like 0.28 is the floor.
0.28, yeah.
Yeah, sold above that in recent hours. And so Lipo just actually made a comment too. People are knocking Ajax like they're going to be way worse. I do think they might be a little worse defensively. I actually think they're better offensively. I think removing Haller, putting in Tadic centrally, bringing in Wijnaldum, or bringing in Bergwijn, that is a upgrade for them offensively.
I mean, Kenny Taylor, man, that's all we have to say.
Well, I want to see Kenny Taylor. I thought Klaassen was pretty terrible. I watched the friendly against Shakhtar. I thought Klaassen was not very good in that game.
Yeah, let's hope.
I definitely am a little bit more concerned with the defense, because I think Lissandro is really good. And replacing Lissandro with Blind, I definitely think that's a downgrade. I think Wrench is also a downgrade. Wrench from Mazraoui. So I definitely think defensively they probably got worse. But again, if you hold possession 80% of the game,
yeah, it doesn't even matter.
Takes away a lot of what you guys have to worry about defensively. But so here's another thing that we had during this discussion. So when we were talking about the upside of what Gorter would be, I told Laird I thought his upside was similar to what Diogo Costa was. And Laird told me that Diogo Costa would never be more or the same as Donnarumma. Do you still hold true to that statement, Laird?
I said that Costa would never be at Donnarumma?
Yeah, you said he would never go for more than Donnarumma.
That sounds like something I would say. Did he just recently?
He did go for more than Donnarumma today.
Oh.
Donnarumma's floor is 0.725 on the limited level. And so like Donnarumma or Costa has gone for more than Donnarumma today. So
why?
I don't have a good answer for that one, unfortunately. Costa's really good. Like, it just is. I think people just want to have as many of the U-Trend 3 goalies as they can have. So like, as you see, like, Costa has sold for more than Donnarumma today.
Yeah.
So they are pretty much identical. If Gorter, so that actually raises what I would say Gorter's upside could possibly be. I would say Gorter could hypothetically get to like 0.6 in a right scenario. Like, if the coach comes out and the manager comes out and says, hey, Jay Gorter played great, he's going to be our goalie going into the season, we're going to give him the keys, or something like that. Like, that happened, Gorter could definitely rise higher than what the original upside projection discussion we had was, which is interesting, I would say.
Right.
Goalkeeper saga has been pretty interesting to me just to watch it move how it's moved because it's gone and drastically changed over and over again.
For sure. Yeah. I think the one thing that we shouldn't ignore is that he might not be the best scoring goalkeeper in
Correct.
terms of upside. And this is another thing that we touched on a little bit on the newsletter. For anybody who hasn't subscribed, it's SorareData.substack.com. It's all over Twitter too, so you can find it there. The new scoring matrix basically will allow us to see higher goalkeeper scores for goalies who make a lot of saves in clean sheets. Like the penalty for goals conceded now for each one will probably increase the standard deviation of goalies. But we're going to see more like 90s and 100s from goalies because of this.
Yes.
And
I think you should go in and explain why that is, because I think people will be confused at what the gap is going to be and why like maybe a non-Gorter type might end up scoring better and have like an upside game. So I think you should talk a little bit about that.
so, yes, I will do that. So the oh boy, there we go. So basically, with the new scoring rules, what we didn't get points for are now more valuable, and it's just there are more points going for goalies. So like we see, like punches are more valuable, good high claims, final third, accurate passes, final third passes, shots from inside the box basically are now like worth double saves, and the points that like very busy goalkeepers get are increased. Simple as that. And we were kind of like, oh, it's like good for like teams that play it out of the back because you have now get points for just accurate passes, which like we didn't get. And you immediately threw out Takaoka, one game I saw had like 60 accurate passes, which is like basically double what like most goalies who are on teams that play it out of the back get. So it's like that's a massive jump in points. So it's really these like shots from inside the box or saves from shots from inside the box have doubled. And so kind of the example we used in our newsletter was that like Courtois' game from the Champions League final, he gained 10 points from that score. So he scored 89, and now it's basically 100. And because he had all these saves, it was in a clean sheet. And so we're going to see team like previously goalies who made a lot of saves, like got a few save points and it just wasn't that many. And now we're just going to see some more of them. And the problem with a player like Gorter is that he just doesn't make enough saves. So like the more that you look at goalies, you're going to have to decide like the ones that cost less are going to score less when they have bad games because they're going to get hit with a 3-point penalty every time they give up a goal. But if they do have a clean sheet and they have a bunch of saves, like we see that Daniel Schmidt's one of them, who I feel like is just peppered with shots, the upside is so much higher. So like you're paying more for the stability of the clean sheet from Gorter or Passveer or whoever, but you're probably not getting like the massive upside. And so it's just a matter of kind of like which way you want to play. Because if you're somebody who's like, I need 90s across the board, like Gorter probably is not going to get there.
Yeah. So basically, with what goaltenders have do, if you go back to the goaltending matrix change, goaltenders literally. So all right, we're gonna remove the keeper sweeper and cross not claimed. Like yes, keeper sweepers tap them, but like some goalies do it more so than others, and it will obviously hurt them. So like, I'm not discounting that as all. Cross not claimed, like that's just pretty fluky stat that doesn't happen.
It's a weird one.
But so if you remove those two, if you just don't pretend those two fouls, typically you're not going to have a goalie fouling one. Like that just doesn't happen that often. If they do, they concede a penalty or dead anyways. Doesn't matter. But every other scenario here where a goalie keeps a clean sheet remains the same except for you gain points. So like if we'll use Gorter as an example here. So like the Ajax goalie last year probably was like at 65 a lot of the games. Like that's where they ended up. Well, now you're probably going to add like 5 points worth of accurate passes, like 3 to 5 points worth of accurate passes, and you're going to add maybe a point or so here and there. So you're probably going to add, like, let's say 5 points. So like on average in the new matrix, you're going to add like 5 points in the games where they keep a clean sheet. So like just looking at like week 212, he went from 75 to 82. So like that is a big increase. But like a lot of these weeks, you'll see it goes from like in 202, it goes from 64 to 67. So you're going to see that with Gorter. If you go to a guy that sees more shot volume and makes more saves, when they have a clean sheet, they might end up increasing their score by 8 to 10 instead of increasing their score by 5. So I think what you're going to see is you're going to end up having Jay Gorter be someone that, let's say, has more stability and puts up more like 70s. But if you go to someone else, I'm thinking like Lars Understall. I'm thinking like him. Like if you go to like Lars Understall, so he doesn't. The issue, I guess, with Understall is he doesn't necessarily play it out the back that frequently. He does sometimes. But like if you look at Understall, like some of these games, so you might have a lot of saves in the box, and his scores might go up quite a bit. Again, it's hard to know exactly who, and as you see, it's not even that big of a difference. So like to me, I think it makes the goalies that are going to keep clean sheets even more valuable. I agree with Laird to some extent that I think some of these goalies are going to, let's say, have more of an upside if they face a lot of shots and they keep a clean sheet, because that is true. Like if you have someone that is that faces 10 shots and has 10 saves, their scores in the event of a clean sheet are going to be massive. They're not going to get them very often, but they're going to be pretty large. Whereas like someone like Gorter, whenever he keeps a clean sheet, the score used to be 65. Now it's going to be 70. So I think that's pretty valuable in that type of aspect.
Yeah, I'm just clicking through a few here. Metal Gear was saying we should look at Lopez here. Like, yeah, I mean, we see scores going from, 76 to 82. Yeah, like, I think what's interesting is that the averages don't change all that much. But if you're somebody who like looks for upside, like you're going to get more for the guys who, like, literally his average changed 1/10 of a point over the last year, let's call it. But like there are some games where literally he's gaining like 8 points. And so there's just going to be more of those types of games. Yeah, Safanov's a good one. Who was that? Baptiste, yeah. So even if we just look, let's see. Yeah, like this game, what was this? Game week 270, going from 85 to 97. Like that's a massive, massive jump. And his average actually decreases. Like Safanov's going to get hit with the goals conceded problem. But like that's like the clearest example right there, that he goes from an average L40 from 51.8 to 50.5. But like his good games are now higher because of the new scoring matrix.
Yes, correct. And it's very interesting in terms of goalies, like how the adjustments come. To me, it more exaggerates the need to keep a clean sheet, because if you like, let's compare like right now, currently today, a goalie that keeps a clean sheet versus a goalie that gives up 2 goals. There's no difference outside of the clean sheet bonus. In this new matrix, a goalie that keeps a clean sheet versus a goalie that gives up 2 goals, it's a 6-point difference to start with. Yep. So it more exaggerates the need to keep a clean sheet even more than it already was, which was already a tremendously high amount. Because everyone, like if you look at most of the keepers, like the goalies that are on good teams that hold possession, they're going to play it out the back more. They're probably going to get more passes. They're going to add points that way. Goalies that are maybe on worse teams, like they're going to face more shots, so they're going to save more shots in the box, which therefore means they'll make more stats added that way. So it's more so just comes down to the goals conceded. If you aren't conceding a goal, then you're going to add about 5 to 6 points to your score compared to someone that has given up 2 goals compared to what it used to be. And 3 points if it's at 1 goal. If a goal gives up 3, obviously you're just dead anyways. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Even so, like I will say, it's a much bit more of a negative situation if you concede 3 and then save a penalty. Because in the past, if you saved 3, 4, 5 goals and saved a penalty, you were back in the game and you were honestly pretty okay. Whereas now, if you do that and you give up 4, 5, 6 goals or whatever, you're going to get minus 9, 12, 15, 18 points on top, and you're not going to be okay. So I think it just has exaggerated the need to get a clean sheet more, which is honestly not good. And funnily enough, Laird, we were talking about Safonov, and I had some regrets from not playing Safonov. But it looks like he just committed a penalty in the 75th minute on a clean sheet. So he might get buried from where he was, unfortunately.
Get out of here with that.
I don't know if he did or if it's a mistake because it's not showing on Sofa. Oh, he got canceled. It said goal canceled. So I'm not really sure what's going on in terms of today. Oh, so it gave him an airlift goal.
Took it off.
They took so I don't know what's going on. We'll have to wait and see how it's back on as a clean sheet now. So
oh man, that was terrible.
It would have been pretty funny though after I was complaining about not playing.
Seriously, yeah.
Ooh, by the way, so completely off topic for everyone, but I feel like it needs to be discussed because we haven't talked about it much recently. This is Carlos Gil's week, guys. Carlos Gil's gonna hopefully come through this week and rip us off a 90 to 100. So for those who have been faithful to him, I'm not talking to people that have complained and said he's dead because those people, they don't deserve the score he's going to get. But those of you who have been a proud Carlos Gil supporter with us, this is the week. If he doesn't produce in like the next 5-week stretch, Laird, we can just do the coffin dance with him because he's going to be very sad in that scenario.
So the game that or the situation you were just talking about before about like a goalkeeper giving up 3 goals but then saving a penalty. We saw this just the other week with Rafael Romo from DC United, who was an extremely popular specialist goalkeeper that week because the guy just never scores 40. So he's like constantly eligible. And Philly beat him 7-0. I think they scored 5 goals in the first half. And he was just like completely dead. And then he saves a penalty, ends up on 51 points, despite giving up 7 goals. 7.
Quinny. No.
But the new one is 32.
Oh, no.
32 he would have scored. Quinny thinking Sebastian Lletget is
no.
I don't even want to talk about it.
No, Quinny, I'm wearing a Celtic kid. I mean, come on. You can't disrespect us like that.
That's
Sebastian Lletget's terrible.
Yeah.
In terms of SF5 and real life. Oof, that's painful. Yeah, exactly. So it's a big difference. I just think that we are just, if you don't keep a clean sheet, you're very likely screwed anymore. You need to keep a clean sheet, or I mean, I guess you need to have a decisive. If you make a penalty save, like you're probably still fine too. But like, yeah, it's really just, it's really, really exaggerated the need to keep a clean sheet. So moving from goaltender into the next position where an impact came out at defender. So for those who have seen the Matrix changes, which I'm assuming everyone here has seen, there is a major change in the terms of fullbacks. So I think Trent Alexander-Arnold went from like a mediocre to good option in Champ Europe and U23 as a defender into the second best, arguably the best defender on the platform, which I'm not going to disagree with. I know Laird will have other things to say about that, so I'll let him say that because I'm not gonna hate on TAA like he would. I will say, Laird, so if the Matrix came out, I knew the Matrix came out, and there was a price of like 5 ETH on TAA on the market, I would have snap bought it immediately. It might even be a good buy at 8 ETH. Like it might be a good buy at 8 ETH because I think that his upside is very similar to like Mbappe. Like his scores, like if you look at his scores on the new Matrix, like doesn't he have like 10 100s in his last like 40 games?
It's a lot.
Yeah, look at that. That's just massive. And so here's the thing with TAA too. If they're playing Real Madrid, you can just not prioritize him like he's a god. And then you can prioritize him more in better matchups where it's like, hey, they're very likely to score multiple goals in this matchup because this team is worse than what they were playing elsewhere. But so we saw a lot of changes with fullbacks. I actually had a couple on my gallery that I noticed. I had Guilherme, who I had tried to sell a few times over the summer. He was like a guy that I was like, I tried to sell him, or I considered selling him like 3 times. And I listed him, I think at one point I listed him underneath, I think. And he wasn't selling at all. Then I got bombarded with offers. What?
Super rare?
Yeah, super rare. I got bombarded with offers over the last couple days about him, and I was gonna sell him at 1, And then I'm like, I need to do a deep. I told the one guy was messaging me. So like, as you see, so like, I think I listed him a couple times in the 1 ETH range, and it never sold. So I was like debating what to do with him or whatnot. Laird sold him. That's solid.
7 months ago, I won him and sold him.
There you go. That, to be fair, that was a pretty reasonable spot. But like before the upgrade, he was fine. Like he was like a 57 average defender, but he had duds because, again, he's a fullback. But with this new change, he's moved to the 14th best defender, I think, in Challenge Europe, which if you're in the top 20 or so, like that's a totally usable card that's pretty viable to have. And then another person that I had in my gallery that I noticed was Pedro Porro for Sporting. He has gone, and the issue with Porro is like if you look at his logs, he's a bit difficult to look at because he's been injured a bunch and he's missed a lot of games. But he's someone that has quite a few spikes. If you open up to all, you'll see more game log from him, where you'll see more spikes and whatnot too. So like you'll see like he's someone that benefited as well. Is he the best player? No, but he's someone that can produce as well. Better than what he did. And then Kai Wagner was the other guy that I noticed. Kai Wagner went up quite a bit. He should be.
Kai went up really.
So looking for feed said Tolkien went up. Oh yeah, check Fukumori. Let's see what Fukumori did since I own his unique. I haven't even checked him. He's been out, not starting, so I honestly didn't check him. But he should go up tremendously, I would imagine. He loses possession a shitload. Yeah, so he's definitely increased as well as a player. Did you have any guys that you noticed in your gallery that you were excited about the increase?
Nothing that like jumped out. It was basically like when it came out and it was like everyone's like, yeah, I think this helps fullbacks. And it's like it was clear that any change they were going to make was going to benefit fullbacks because there was just so much complaining that fullbacks like weren't great. The one that I thought was really funny was Hakimi because he really doesn't change.
No, didn't really change. I expected him to go up, but he really moved. I think he moved like a very small amount.
Right. Like it's almost is it the exact same? It's not quite the same, but it's like 0.5 of a point, something like that.
Yeah, it's very close.
So it's close, and he's still just like all over the place. And so, but I did see like Porro was like so obvious that like everybody went right to buying him. Like he just like popped right away.
Porro, Gilherme, there was a few others that people. I think Kai Wagner. People went very fast to Kai Wagner. The issue with Kai Wagner is, I think Kai Wagner ends up back in Germany after this.
Yeah,
season.
He wants to.
Like, by the time the matrix changes, like Wagner's got like a month left, and then he probably dies.
Yep. So the thing about Wagner, he is now ranked higher in terms of L40 than Marquinhos.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, man.
He's really good in the new Matrix. On the new Matrix, he's like plus 5 points. And he was already pretty serviceable. And his upside games are pretty tremendous. Yeah, I mean, his rare is selling for 0.42 is what his last rare sold for on Kai Wagner. So, like, he has effectively gone up by, I don't know, 60%. But
yeah,
so
I mean, his new L40 is 62.
Yeah. Really strong.
Like, that's really
like that 62 includes a lot of decisive actions, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking with Trip and B, one of our buddies, and Trip and B, and I agree with most everything Trip and B has said in this situation. It's difficult to me when you come in and you just change the matrix and you see guys' prices adjust by like 70%. And that is just, the game is probably too far along to be making changes to the matrix like this, that are adjusting guys that drastically. Like Trent Alexander-Arnold, his increase was like 12% increase to his scores every single game. It's a lot. Yeah. So like I would like and also like, let's be honest, this I think was the sober people making these decisions are probably a bit out of touch with how people that actually play the game would think. They gave us a month lead time. I think they think a month lead time was a reasonable amount.
I agree with you.
And everyone that plays the game is like, that is not a reasonable amount. To me, a reasonable amount is at minimum 6 months.
Mine was less. I mean, it kind of is the same thing. But I think looking at it as like you only gave us a month completely ignores that people started getting ready for the upcoming season before that.
Correct.
And so I don't know exactly when the right time would have been, but I know that this was too late. As
Yes.
simple as that. Like it would almost have been better at the end, like literally, like the Champions League final ends, and on that Monday they're like, "Hey, coming up,
That's
so you have all summer," and I don't know.
that's valid. So to me, here's the issue, Ray, is that I think it needs to be long enough where people need to be like, oh, do I want this guy who gets way better with the upcoming changes, or do I go with this guy that is better in this matrix and then will get worse? And you have to make a decision of like, do you want to give up this for this, or like how do you commingle the two? Whereas like right now, it's pretty much just go buy the new matrix because it's happening in no time. Like you're missing like 3 games of the Premier League season to go and just adjust immediately and go buy Trent Alexander-Arnold. But
Right.
I really, no one went down. Like even like you talked about, Marquinhos got worse, but his price didn't fully tank, I don't believe. Because like, yeah, so like his price is pretty much what it was. So like, I don't think people got worse with this update. They did comparatively, because that's
The
the problem
point.
people don't grasp is when you have other people going up. If Marquinhos loses 1 point, that's not a big deal. But if everyone else is gaining 4 or 5 points and Marquinhos is losing a point, that's a big deal. But I don't. So I think people just didn't adjust properly to that aspect of things. People aren't realizing that is happening with some people. But I guess part of the issue too is like Marquinhos is still good, and some of these guys are still good. They didn't really kill players per se, but they definitely made some people a lot better than what they were originally.
Yeah, I just think that's something that a lot of people aren't necessarily thinking about. Like Marquinhos actually is his L40 actually worse now? 59
Well,
points.
in the top
Yeah.
toggle, his L40 went down 2 points.
Right. So his L40 goes down 2 points, and Trent Alexander Arnold's goes up 7 or 8.
Yeah.
Like that's a massive change.
Yes.
And what I what I didn't what I didn't appreciate was how they were like there were 0% of players who gain more than 5 points.
Yeah, I didn't understand.
And within like 1 second, we were like, this is not true.
Yeah, like immediately you're like, no, that is not true. Like it just wasn't.
So what made me think about this, or what this reminded me of, is when they started talking about, and they weren't even really talking about it. That survey went out, but when the discussion started coming out about bringing in women's football cards, and they were like, do we want women's leagues to be included in Global All-Star? And they were like, we ran the numbers, and on average, they're all kind of the same of what we see. And the response to that everyone had was like, the averages don't matter. It's that you now have these outliers who are going to dominate the game.
Yeah.
And that's why that was like the main reason of why we didn't want them to basically commingle these cards. Because if you had a Barcelona stack, you were going to win everything. Barcelona women's team.
Yes.
Because they win La Liga or by 80 points with a 150 goal differential, whatever it is. But the point was that the outliers matter significantly in this game. And now you make these rules that now create outliers, and they're like, yeah, there's only like 5 or 6 of them. And it's like, yes, but those are cards now that people have to compete against, which is why we see somebody spend 22 ETH on 3 Trent Alexander-Arnold rare cards. Correct. Because like he is now the outlier. And so we were part of a conversation actually about whether he's better than Timber now or not. And we saw in terms of like being the best, and the one side of the argument was like, he's going to hit hundreds more than Timber, so he's better. And the other one was like, well, he could also hit 40s more often than Timber, and so he's not better. But like they basically created these outliers while using the math that on average everything's the same.
Yes. And it's difficult because like people have prepared for, like you said, for the season by buying outlier cards or buying cards that are way better than other cards. Well, by doing that, by just introducing a new outlier, that makes that outlier worth more, the old outlier is worth less, but you just dropped it on people and just announced it immediately. And it was, I just think the game is too far along to do stuff like that. At this point, I definitely think going forward, the game is too far along. Like, I do not want to see another matrix adjustment. When I say I don't want to see another matrix adjustment, I don't want to see another matrix adjustment that like drastically changes stuff. I still want to see the penalties drawn be given as a decisive like it's supposed to be, or be like, we remove that and we're giving you 5 points if you draw a penalty. Just here's 5 points. That's what you get. Whatever. Something like that to me isn't a big deal. Or like if you remove the errors led to a goal or something like that as a negative decisive. That doesn't really impact anything that drastically, and it's kind of just what it is. But it's a situation where I just would like to see, we just are too far along in the process. Luckily for me, like I'll say, like I am lucky enough to, my gallery's big, and I generally will have guys that are helped and hurt by a scoring adjustment. Like I will typically have guys like that. Like this time was no different. Like I had guys that got worse because of scoring adjustments, and then I had guys that were benefited by the way the scoring adjustment made. So
Sure.
I'm a lucky one where it just probably no matter what happens doesn't impact me fully. But there's a lot of people, like let's say this, let's use this example of what happened. Let's pretend they just nerfed Jurien Timber and they just turned him into like a 60 average defender. That's not fair to anyone that's paid 4 or 5 ETH for his card, knowing what they're getting out of him, knowing that he's an elite level player and turning him into a mediocre one. So to me, going forward, I just think that we are too far along. And something else I want to say is I've been around the fantasy industry for a decade. So have you. You've maybe been longer. Have you been longer? Or less? Maybe you're less. I don't know.
It's close.
Yeah, so we've both been around the fantasy industry for a decade. Sorare is a fantasy industry game, regardless of what. Obviously, it's a crypto game. It's everything, but it's a fantasy game. Its scoring and the way that the Matrix works on Sorare is better than any other fantasy game either of us have ever played.
It's not even close.
It's not close, like not at all close. If you talk to any of the guys that have come over from DFS and came over from the fantasy side, talk to them. Everyone likes Sorare scoring Matrix way better than what the Matrix is elsewhere. So I think that we need to just keep a stable system going forward and hopefully not adjust things that drastically impact things. I think if you do something that like maybe just moves stuff very, very slightly, that's okay. But you just can't come in and just fully adjust things that make new cards into the marquee cards that you need to have on the platform.
Yeah, no. Bob Flynn just told us that Safanov conceded in the 90th.
He did, luckily, because I put him in a non-priority lineup. I don't care.
Oh man,
he still put up 62. Like it's more than fine. But yes, obviously you don't want a 92nd minute concession, but
62 with a concession is not bad.
Actually. No, 62 with the concession is like okay, that's fine.
What is that with the new Matrix though?
So Brones made a point about that he disagrees and he thinks that scoring adjustments are necessary. They've been very sensitive with these tweaks, making the game much more even. I don't think that the tweaks were very sensitive. I think there were some, if you have guys moving 12.5% or so on their scores, it's not fully sensitive. And anytime you do a scoring matrix change, you're going to drastically impact stuff. What I would recommend is, I don't disagree with your, with you insinuating that you need to adjust scoring matrices time by time. That's probably true. You probably do need to, like, let's say all of a sudden, like in world football, they decide a secondary assist is an assist, like the MLS does. It's very unlikely, but like pretend that happens. Obviously, Sorare would need to go and adjust that and be like, this is something we need to add or we need to look at. Make them, and it should be like, for example, like passes got changed from 0.1 to 0.08. That's one update. Just do that. So if a guy goes from 0.1 to 0.08 for passing, that's the only update that comes in. Or like forwards got interceptions added to their stats. That's the only update. So this update, we saw 20, 25 different stats adjusted. And I think that's just a lot. And I think that that is a tremendous amount. And I don't think there's tons of stuff that like I would argue about. Like this was the original Matrix and like I came and saw this. That's fine. I just think that you need to be very, very careful when making any adjustments. And I would probably make them like maybe you go into every year and you're like, hey, we're going to make a small change twice a year at this time and this time. And then every twice a year, you do like 2 small tweaks that impact people like under a half a point maximum everywhere. Obviously, there's going to be some outliers. There's always going to be some outliers with something. But like you can always be like, all right, this is the max adjustment it's going to be. It's going to be like 1 point is the max adjustment anyone gets. Nothing's really going to change over 1 point. When you're moving 10%, you're moving like 10 percentage points on players instead of like 2 percentage points on players and their results. That's a big increase and big change over what things are.
Yep.
I didn't. So actually, here's a question, Larry. I wasn't following along as fully with the with like general chat and stuff on the day the scoring matrices changed and happened. What was the overall sentiment from people of the matrix changes?
Are you implying I like went into the general Discord and
I feel like you're more in touch with the overall general. I mean, actually, that might not be true. I might be more than you, but I don't know.
I haven't spent time in the general Discord enough to figure out. But I think so. There are 2 things, and they were brought up in our chat, thankfully, so that I don't have to go into the general Discord. Stokey Scott said it's harder on people with smaller budgets because they've already prepared for the season, don't have the funds to adjust quick enough to the change in matrix.
Agreed.
I think that's a great point, particularly because now you're trying to get rid of cards that aren't as good anymore, like that they used to be good. And there was one. So Nanzo said, is it possible to make material changes to the matrix and not produce outliers? So it's kind of weird. Like, I don't think they had to make material changes. Like, you can make like small adjustments here or there. I think if you're going to do that though, and I think it was our friend Trip and B who brought this up, like if you're going to make tiny changes that just adjust things a little bit here and there, do you even need to make them? Because now you're just like changing things to change things. But I think, oh man, I just had a thought and it just like, where was I going with this? Oh, okay. I remember. So it feels like the foundation of these changes are really from the constant complaint that fullbacks get penalized too much for giving the ball away. Like literally every conversation before they announced the scoring changes about a new matrix was like, well, they have to fix fullbacks because you can't lose the ball 30 times in a game and be punished for it. Like that's ridiculous. And it depends where you give the ball away. Not all lost possession is the same, blah, blah, blah. And the kind of like broad response that I had to that specifically was not every position has to be important. Like you shouldn't have to have like fullbacks should be equal to center backs, should be equal to defensive mids, to wingers, to attack. Like it's okay to have positions that are just like not as important. And yet I feel like the matrix is complicated enough where they built this scoring that were like, if you're watching a game, you should know what you're getting points for or losing points for. And people joke about that, like when they're watching games and then, you know, their player gives it away and you're like, oh, that's a possession lost, or, oh, good, that's an intercept. Like you're seeing that. But when you have a scoring matrix that scores 1,000 things in a game, now it's like, okay, how do we make every position important? And I just like don't think you have to. And obviously it's just my opinion. I'm not going to say that anybody's right or wrong. But this whole like fullbacks have to be more important. And my response is just like, why? Why do they have to be? Can't center backs just be more valuable? And now they're not. Like they literally just flipped it. So now we're like, I don't know, like everyone is now going to fullbacks because like they're the ones. And I feel like the next scoring change, they're going to be like, oh, we have to like prop center backs up again because like they're not important enough. Aren't they more important? Aren't center backs more important than fullbacks? Like anybody can play fullback.
I don't claim to play fullback, Larry. I only claim to play goalie.
Yeah. The dumbest.
Fullback's way too much running for me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that so Brones made another discussion point. I think that's actually a good point to like tie in with what you said earlier. I think Sorare should after the Champions League final every May or June, whenever it is, that Monday immediately after, these are the small adjustments we are making. We won't make any more. This is what you have going. We will start this August 15th of next season, the first week of the Premier League season, whatever they want to use. August 1st, like use the August 1st. So effectively, that will give you 2.5 months of time. Most likely, people have not fully gone into preparation mode for the European season. I think that would be a good way to establish it and set a precedence. A lot of it comes down to setting a precedent and like going with it and having it make sense. And like to me, that would make logical sense with things. I think that for goalies, I would even, well, it just is what it is. Goalies are just not fun. They are the same thing in DFS. They are the cost of entry that if it doesn't go well, you're screwed and your line's dead. Like I have a lot of lineups every weekend, and if my goalie concedes, I'm just like, all right, that line's dead. Unless I see someone rip off what Safinoff did and they get a 62, because you're just not having great success unless they get a clean sheet, which is just not fun to watch. But that is what it is. I don't fully agree with you on fullbacks in terms of losing possession and the penalization for it. I do think, though, however, which we don't need to go into because it'll take too long, the penalties, and like you had different solutions of like reduce the lost possession in the final third to like a half a point instead of a point. I thought stuff like that made a lot of sense and that was viable. But like, that would have changed stuff very much. That could change stuff tremendously as well, because Trent Alexander-Arnold loses the ball 30 times a game. Probably 20 of them are in the final third. So like all of a sudden you cut off a half a point there. Like that's 10 points Trent Alexander gains per game. So it just is a very difficult thing. So all right, moving on to midfielders, Laird. I don't really believe tons adjusted with midfielders other than the guys in the middle sort of that are eating interceptions and possessions and duels. It helped them. But I will say, so like they made it seem like in the update, and this was a confusing thing to me, they made it seem in the update like they were trying to make a balance between the defensive mids and then the attacking midfielders. They wanted to make attacking midfielders stronger. I think they made defensive midfielders slightly stronger, but overall the impact's very minimal. But like I looked, like the most benefited people that I really saw was like Sangare, Kimmich, and Casemiro were like three of the most moved up guys in the rankings. And so overall, like I think there was very minimal impact to the midfielders, but like I was very confused by that comment. And then looking at the change, I'm like, how does this stuff change the attacking midfielders?
I didn't see it. Like it clearly like benefits the defensive guys like Casemiro or like the more defensively minded ones, because they're the ones who do get fouled. Like they also commit fouls, but like they get fouled. They win interception, or they get interceptions. They win duels more often, and like people are like, oh well, like the duel lost and duel won are still the same. Like one's positive 0.8 and one's negative 0.8, but like for guys who win a lot more duels, like you're going to get to see more points because each one is obviously worth more. Brones was talking about, to go back to defenders for a second, Seol Young-woo doesn't cross as much for Ulsan, and so even though Ulsan tend to control the game in the final third, so he didn't get benefited by the scoring change. Like that's sort of my problem with the possession lost. That like it's really just guys who whip in crosses, aimless crosses from the side, and now it's like, oh, that's not so bad anymore. And it's like most of those crosses are just nothing. And if they do turn into something, you get the attempted assist or the assist, and it's like I just didn't feel like we basically are like moving closer to DraftKings, where it's like, oh yeah, you just have a cross donkey, like great, just send them in. Who cares?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that is, I mean, definitely true. Like the guys that are going to, like the biggest defender or midfielder that jumped up was Jensen. That was the biggest one that I remember seeing, was like Jensen moved up like 3 or 4 points. Kimmich was like right there with him. But like they did say that in the article, right? In the article, they said they're like, we want to make the offensive midfielders better. Like that was said, right? Or am I just like delusional in this moment?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm reading, I'm like, what? I'm like, this just didn't do that.
It didn't
but yeah, like overall, I think the midfielders as a whole just didn't really get much of an impact. I think that the impact on, I think they made goalies goalies that get a clean sheet better. Goalies that don't get a clean sheet are worse, I think. I don't know if you can even test that. Can you test that?
So it's really more about the saves.
Yes, but I'm saying if you're giving up 3 points for a goal conceded, none of the other stuff will fully make up for it to the most part. Whereas, like, if you are getting a clean sheet, you're effectively adding 5 to 10 points to your score. So I think what they did is they just made like goalies that keep a clean sheet more valuable, and then defenders. Obviously, we've gone over that. Forwards and midfielders really had no impact. Like the change on forwards and midfielders had no impact, especially forwards. I think one position that I think is, I guess, a little bit disrespected on the platform are like nines. Like your striker just does not score well. There's just no way for them to score well. Now I don't know how to make them score well. I don't know how to make that more impactful, but like your out and out strikers, like even if they get 25 goals in a season, which is a lot, just don't produce. And it just, all these changes didn't do anything to that. The people I think really get benefited at forward are the wingers that win a lot of duels, that beat people in duels.
It's also like very good pressing forwards who can get some defensive actions. Like we actually saw Dusan Tadic's averages like go up because he gets like a few interceptions a game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
minimal.
I'm fine with nines. Not like nines have the highest upside in terms of goals, and so like I think that's what it is. Like you can't have everyone have a good floor and have high ceilings. Like you have to have, and that's sort of the difference with goalies now is the ones who get a lot of clean sheets are now consistently good. But if you have a guy like every save from inside the box is now worth more than a goal conceded. So if you make 7 saves inside the box from shots inside the box and give up 1 goal, like you can make up for it. Safonov just did it. And so like I just don't think like that the thing with nines goes back to like I'm okay with not everyone having to be equally valued.
Metal Gear just said Joselu of all the forwards got the biggest benefit. I mean, if that's not like the guy that deserves the biggest benefit, I don't know who should be, because I mean Joselu is just a god. Like, let's be honest. And then Brones. Okay, so Brones said that they wanted to make defensive midfielders better. Oh. Which, if that's the case, that's kind of weird to me because like they were already good. But maybe it makes sense because they don't get as many decisive, so like they need to have a better all-around game. So I don't. It's fine. There wasn't much impact within the midfielders and the forwards that I saw out there. I still don't understand why forwards can't get a tackle. Like, why can a forward not win a tackle and get points for it? Like, that makes no sense to me.
So that drives me nuts. Like, I actually really hate positional-based scoring.
I do too.
Like,
to some extent.
It's almost always for me. And the only reason why it like tends to not work is if the player's position is just wrong. But like 2 players doing the same action and getting different points for it like makes no sense to me. Like it still happened. The argument with forwards.
The reason it has to happen though is because if you don't do positional based scoring, there's always going to be a position that is super duper way out above the other ones.
But then you just don't include that stat at all.
That would make the matrix like nothing. There would be like no matrix.
So
like for example, like final third passes, like defenders getting points for final third passes. That could be like that's like how they get their points. So like a forward and a winger making final third passes is a lot different than a fullback or center back making a final third pass. It's more so about balancing the matrix, Laird, in my opinion, in terms of positional based stats. Like you have to keep things to where things are balanced, and the only way you can do so is with positional based stats. But tackles don't make sense. Like if forwards make limited tackles as it is, they should be able to win a tackle. If they make a tackle, they should get points for it.
So like so that's actually like the best example is that it seems like the argument is like, oh, they don't get that many of them, so like we're not going to worry about it. Like their forward tackles should be worth twice what the midfielder ones are because that never happens. Andy brings up this point that you can get double doubles and triple doubles and triple triples for forwards, even though they don't get points for the underlying stats.
It's very weird.
At least the tackles.
I mean, that's what like getting a double double as a forward is pretty important because it's 4 points a lot, especially if you're like a target man, like a 9. Getting 4 points is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's really important to your AA game.
the tackles one is baffling to me. The interceptions will help, I suppose, but I mean, again, those like traditional forwards don't get those things that often anyway, but it does help like when you have them.
Yes.
Anyway, but yeah, I think so. Were there any other than Trent Alexander-Arnold, because everybody had that thought, and you have a fairly sizable gallery anyway, but were there any players that you don't have and you're like, shit, I need to go get someone like, I have to go get this guy?
Not having Trent is definitely detrimental to anyone at this moment, in my opinion, because Trent became very valuable. The issue is like you said, it all comes down to outliers. The only person that I think that went from not an outlier to an outlier is Trent. I could be wrong, but I don't think maybe Kai Wagner.
Yep.
Maybe Kai Wagner, but I don't know. I think the only person that went from like a legit alpha, or went from like an okay card to a legit alpha card, was Trent Alexander-Arnold. I don't think anyone else went from good to elite other than him. I think he's the only one that was went to full outlier mode.
Do you think the low number of Trent Alexander cards makes it easier to just be like, oh, I just don't have him, and that there are not that many people that have him? Or is it I really need one because not many people have them?
I think it's more so you just understand you're not going to. I think my viewpoint with all Liverpool cards has typically been, I do have a Robertson actually. I was
going to say, and what about the fact that Robertson might be just as good?
Robertson's really good. Robertson went up quite a bit. I think that Robertson's value is. I'm actually happy because I've tried to sell Robertson 3 or 4 times and I haven't done it. And obviously he got a significant amount better here. So that was a plus for me as well. The issue for me is in the lineups that I plan on running the ideas, I don't think Robertson will fit that frequently. So I probably will try to sell it, but I think he should go up in price. He should really be 4 or 5 ETH, I think. If based on what he scores and what he does in terms of production, he should be a lot higher. But there's always discussions of when is Tsimikas going to take over for him, or is that not going to happen, or what's going to happen. But Liverpool, the way I look at Liverpool cards is you pretty much, if you want one, you have to go pay whatever the price is at that time.
Sure.
And the price for Trent Alexander-Arnold for me right now is, for me and I imagine a lot of freaking people, is too much. You do not, if you did not already have a Trent Alexander-Arnold at 4 ETH or whatever it was, you're not going to go and get Trent Alexander-Arnold at 8 ETH. Even if he is that good of a card, because it's the same thing with Mbappe. If everyone had the funds to go buy Mbappe, they would. You don't have that many funds to go get him, and the amount of people that do. I mean, how many people even have a gallery the size that makes sense to go get an Mbappe? I'm going to pull up the rankings here and see how many people even have a 14 ETH gallery, because that number is probably not super high.
Right.
It's probably I don't know how many people on the platform have a 15 plus ETH gallery, 1,000.
That even seems low.
I'm not sure if it'll load. I'm trying to load it as we discuss.
Yeah, I think so. Robertson's price has doubled in a week.
Yeah, but it should be higher. It should never have been this much of a difference anyways, I don't think.
Really?
I
think it should have been higher. Yeah.
I think he should have been closer to TA to begin with.
Yep. I don't disagree with that.
We have a new wonderful person in chat, Naked Sex XYZ.
Real helpful. No, I think, I don't know. That just seems like if somebody's price is literally doubling, then maybe they're benefiting too much. Is that unfair?
No, that was my original comment with Trent Alexander-Arnold. If you have guys going up 60, 70, 80% in price, I think that means that there was probably too much of an increase. So it's something as we see Laird bring out the band hammer and report this guy.
Trying.
Yeah, you just got to get rid of that stuff. That's a lot. And it's not just them. Clearly it's not them. We saw Pedro Porro go up a tremendous amount, and we saw Kai Wagner. Kai Wagner went from 0.25 to 0.425 or whatever. That is a tremendous increase on a player because of that. All right, so I'm looking at how many people have a 15 ETH gallery. So it finally loaded. So 500 people or so have a 50 ETH gallery. So let's see if I go down more. It's going to be a couple thousand, I think. So there's what, 1.2 million users on Sorare, and I'm going to call it about, I don't want to keep scrolling. I'm going to call it about 2,000, 2,500 people have a gallery enough to buy Mbappe. So like when you talk about like these guys, like Trent Alexander-Arnold's like right there with Mbappe. I think the only cards higher than him now are Mbappe, Haaland, and Kimmich. Those are the only three cards more expensive right now than Trent Alexander-Arnold. So like if you don't already have them, like getting that type of funds to go buy them is obviously very difficult.
Yeah, I don't think this is making anybody go out and buy Mbappe though.
No, what makes it makes all those guys worse because like they didn't get a 8-point increase in their stats like Trent Alexander-Arnold did.
Yeah, that's.
And I have my two biggest regrets on the platform are not buying Vinny Jr. at like 0.7 ETH and not buying Trent Alexander-Arnold when I looked at him. I tried to get him for like 10% off of what he was listed at. Those are my two biggest regrets. Luckily,
I remember
this like exaggerated that regret.
One of mine was Alexander-Arnold, not Robertson, like at the end of last season, like in the summer, last summer, like 0.27. Oh my god!
I've definitely considered selling Robertson on the way many times. He just doesn't fit my lineup. It's not that he's not a good player, not a good scorer. Just he doesn't fit my lineup construction well because I don't use him I'm not using him in Champ Europe Rare Pro and then Gas 3 is just a weird spot to use him realistically. And then Champ 4, like I don't care, I guess.
Yeah, he's just a weird card.
Yeah, he's a weird card. If I had an Allison, which again, that's a guy I'm just not going to buy. I'm not going to pay 7 or 8 ETH for an Allison right now. If I had an Allison, I would be a lot more like into that card and be like, this is a great card to have and stuff. I
agree that Allison is a good card to have.
I wish I had one. I just do not, and that is not something on my buy list right now. He's going for 8 ETH. Like he's going for amount. I would much rather have a Trent Alexander-Arnold than I would have an Allison. And that is not close. Like that's my thing. Is like I would not want that.
Sure. A Trent. Well, you can find Allison scores elsewhere.
Yes.
And I'm not sure you're finding Trent Alexander-Arnold's.
Correct. Agreed.
Which is why maybe they should have looked into that more when they did the scoring matrix. Just saying. All right. Thank you to everybody who has joined us in chat, including that wonderful bot that I had to like waste time reporting to YouTube. So I appreciate Glenn's comment here that we know we've made it big time when we have sex bots in the chat. So that's always nice. So Sean, congrats to you as well for being part of that team. Looking for Fruit said maybe he wanted a gallery review and that was the only way to get attention. That is a very good line too.
I mean, we were supposed to do a gallery review like 3 weeks ago and then Laird just completely forgot.
It's not that it's completely that I forget, but every week I'm like, Sean, we got to do a gallery review this week. And then it's Friday morning and I'm like, oh, we forgot about the gallery review.
No, just moved to a different topic. You literally, it wasn't that. You went from gallery review to a different topic and then you just like, oh, I forgot. Yeah, I always forget. But we'll look through the list again to see if there's anything. We kind of commented to somebody in another Discord that we like the gallery reviews, but it felt like we were just saying the same thing over and over again. And a lot of people with similar sized galleries are like, I've been playing limiteds or I've been playing rares and what should I do next? And like the answer pretty much is like always go buy a super rare and start playing rare pro, but not everybody does that. And we tend not to be like sell your whole gallery and buy limiteds. Sometimes that is what you should do, but I don't know. Anyway. Well, actually some of the people we have done gallery reviews for have been very successful with what they've done. Like Houdini has had a lot of success with moving and transitioning to into like Gas 3 and stuff like that. Like he has had a pretty good summer where he's won quite a few tier 1s, tier 2s, and he's made quite a bit from it. He had a couple tier 0s as well. So he's done over the course of the summer. He's won so many cards over the course of the summer. I think when we did his gallery review, his gallery was like 15 ETH and his gallery is now 25. So like he's had quite a bit of success. He's implemented the strategy and he went for it and did a pretty good job with it. But yeah, everyone like Laird said, like, I mean, how many times can I say go buy Carlos Gil? Because it's old, right?
I'm not sure we're saying that.
People
right
always
now.
joke and make fun of us for how many times we say it, but like it gets old to say the same things. And obviously the gallery reviews, if we're talking 15, 20 ETH galleries, which was a lot of the galleries that we would look at, you're looking at the same groups of players in the same value range, super rares effectively. So we'd just be sitting there every week being like, buy this guy, look into this guy. And it was like the same 10 to 15 players over and over again. And everyone had, because realistically, that was an interesting part of the gallery reviews that I think Laird and I learned, was that there's a lot of people in the exact same spot. They were in like that stagnant spot where they should be doing this instead of what they were doing. And everyone had the exact same spot they were in because that's where their galleries were.
Yep. I will say that if you didn't already watch or listen to our show from last week of building €1,000 gallery, I would say check that out. I'll follow up by saying multiple people contacted me after that to say they have like a 3 ETH gallery and kind of want to see where we would go with that. We'd previously done the 5 ETH. We did the €1,000. 3 ETH is kind of right in the middle there. It's actually more now. So maybe we will tackle that topic sooner rather than later. But
yeah, I honestly, that was fun last week. I thought we did a good job. I think going in blind was good because then we had no idea where we were doing it. I'm even down to do more wide ranges if people want to see like a 15 or 20 gallery type of build from scratch where we just go into it. So I definitely think that was much more enjoyable and much easier to talk through, I think, than the idea of a gallery review as frequent as we were doing them.
Yep. Makes sense. So yeah, thank you to everybody who has joined us in chat. If you guys could please hit the like button. We are at 28 likes right now with 60 people watching right now. I think a few more people have already come and gone, but if you are in and can please hit that like button, that is always appreciated. And if you could please rate and review it wherever you listen to the audio version of the podcast, that is always helpful as well. I'll be back next week with Andy for Sorare Andrews, and then Sean and I will be back at the end of the week for another SorareData strategy show. So yeah, everyone, thank you for that. And Sean, good luck this weekend.